Hollywood sometimes goes through stretches where 2 or more films are released at around the same time with suspiciously familiar themes. 1987 and 1988 saw 3 films explore the idea of teenagers swapping bodies with adult relatives. 1997 saw a couple films explore the idea of unexpected eruptions of long dormant or unknown volcanoes, while the following year saw the protagonists of 2 films deal with an impending asteroid strike. This phenomenon happens often enough that the term twin films has been coined to describe it. The occurrence of twin films isn't always for the same reason. Sometimes it's competing producers pitching the same idea to 2 separate studios. Sometimes it's just cashing in on the latest craze. Sometimes it's trying to pitifully ride the coattails of a successful film or franchise. Back in the mid-2000s, 2 films were released a year apart that explored the idea of a school for superheroes, Sky High and Zoom. With a Rotten Tomatoes score of 73% and box office receipts almost tripling its production budget, Sky High far outperformed the extremely disappointing Zoom, with the latter scoring 3% on Rotten Tomatoes and a measly $12.5 million in box office receipts with a budget of $75.6 million, which was over double the budget for the much more successful Sky High. This is perhaps a good indication that Tim Allen's conservative views may not be the sole reason for his failing film and television career. Maybe Zoom would have done better had the producers worked with Aaron Williams, a talented artist and writer who had already been regularly producing a comic book featuring the offspring of superheroes who attend a secret school to refine their powers and teach them responsibility in their use. That comic is PS238. Named after the radioactive isotope uranium-238, appropriate for a genre where radioactivity is the go-to cause for most superhuman abilities, PS238 tells the story of the students and faculty of the eponymous secret school located 3 miles beneath the normal Excelsior Public School. The student body is comprised mainly of the offspring of the world's superpowered population, referred to as metahumans with meta-abilities, and staffed primarily by former metahuman heroes. Students attend the below-ground school to learn how to use their powers, while simultaneously attending the ordinary above-ground school for a traditional scholastic experience, allowing the meta-children to integrate with regular human children, as well as to hone their abilities in maintaining a secret identity. Like many independent comics, PS238's metahuman community is filled with copyright-friendly versions of the more mainstream DC and Marvel heroes like Superman, Batman, Captain America, and the Hulk. But unlike the 2 comic book titans, Williams focuses more on the day-to-day activities of the metahuman community, and while the occasional clash between heroes and villains occurs, stories are usually kept more grounded in slice-of-life encounters typical for an elementary school setting. Though like most stories where young children are the core characters, they do tend to speak and act more maturely than what their ages would otherwise suggest. Or perhaps that's just another aspect of being a metahuman prodigy. Similar to the main protagonist in Sky High, PS238's core character is young Tyler Marlock, the son of 2 preeminent metahuman heroes who fervently believe their otherwise non-meta son will someday manifest powers. Therefore, they insist he attend PS238 and be treated as any other metahuman student, regardless of the physical danger this will obviously expose him to. The staff agrees to take Tyler for political reasons. His parents are highly regarded members of the metahuman hero community, and practical reasons, since Tyler's parents are determined to expose their son to danger in the hopes of bringing out any nascent meta abilities. The school figures he's probably safer under their supervision than with his more reckless parents. Eventually, Tyler is introduced to the Revenant, a Batman analog who takes the boy under his care as a special instructor. the billionaire Revenant provides Tyler with equipment and training to help him not only survive as a powerless boy in a world of metahumans, who are just as likely to injure him through their inexperience than a supervillain would through intentional malice, but also to help build Tyler's confidence in his own abilities, since his parents seem to view their son as little more than a powerless disappointment. Indeed, as his gadget-equipped alter ego Moonshadow, the somewhat unwilling Tyler thrives by helping his fellow students, and occasionally the teaching staff, out of difficulties and becomes a legend among his powered schoolyard peers, doubly impressed by the business cards supplied by the Revenant, who look up to him as they would an exceptional athlete or a rock star. Oddly enough, Tyler's ability to keep his obvious identity as Moonshadow secret from almost everyone else has led to speculation that this is, in fact, his latent meta ability. Tyler's best friend is the conspiracy theorist Cecil Holmes, originally believed to be just another normal, non-meta child who is determined to prove that many of his fellow classmates are aliens bent on world domination. Cecil doesn't find out until much later that he himself is a metahuman with the power to sense metahuman abilities in others. As an avid fan of science fiction, he misinterpreted the weird feeling many of the disguised meta-children gave him as being exposed to alien life forms which only fed his paranoia. Cecil, too, is eventually taken under the Revenant's unofficial tutelage as well as assimilated into PS238. Other metahuman students include Ron Peterson, aka Captain Clarinet, son of Atlas, and journalist Lisa Larson, analogs for Superman and Lois Lane. Kevin Kramer, aka Emerald Gauntlet Jr., son of the original Emerald Gauntlet, analog of Green Lantern. Alejandro Torres, aka The Flea, analog of Spider-Man. And Bernard Brenner, a blue, monosyllabic child with super strength and son of the unbelievable Ultra Brute, analog of the Incredible Hulk. While most students do have obvious counterparts to DC, Marvel, or independent publishers, not all do. For example, one of the more important metahuman children in later arcs is Julie Finster, a seemingly generic background character who develops a crush, sometimes literally, on Moonshadow. Other students also manifest powers far beyond those typically found in the genre, including one who is capable of transforming everyday objects like chalkboard erasers into food, or another who can make plants grow at an accelerated rate. The faculty of PS238 is comprised mainly of Avengers analogs, including Christina Kyle, aka Micromite, with powers similar to Hank Pym's Ant-Man, Herschel Clay, aka Mantium, analog for Iron Man, only without the drinking and womanizing. Vashti Imperia, aka Spell Siren, analog for Doctor Strange. Dr. Positron, no aka needed, analog for Vision, or a good version of Ultron. Wayne Miller, aka Human Alloy, analog for Colossus, but with the ability to turn into a range of metals. And Maximilian Krutz, aka Rockslide, analog for The Thing. While the majority of the staff were originally members of a metahuman hero team called the Union of Justice, PS238 is led by Principal Alfred Cranston, a former politician with telepathic abilities but no metahuman hero experience. Quite the opposite, in fact, as revealed by a later story arc. Without getting into spoilers, perhaps it's best to say the metal headband he wears functions more like an ankle bracelet rather than a costume enhancement. While on the subject of villainy, PS238 does not discriminate when it comes to who it accepts, and even those with a less than heroic bent or the offspring of megalomaniacal would-be super tyrants are welcome in the school, albeit with extra supervision. This student type is primarily represented by Zoton, possibly an analog of both MODOK and the Tinkerer, whose unwillingness to refrain from using colorful vocabulary resulted in the school planting a chip in his body to keep him from swearing. Instead of profanities, he either spews randomly innocuous words or, in the event he really loses his temper, he sings entire Broadway show tunes.
All I want is a room somewhere far away from the cold night air.
While generally considered the main supervillain at PS238 and one who never fails to pass up an opportunity to annoy or sabotage any of the heroes, particularly Tyler, who Zoton dismissively refers to as Normal Boy, Zoton's real archenemy is fellow villain Victor Von Fogg, the son of Dr. Felipe Von Fogg, a Doctor Doom analog and Williams' thinly disguised nod to fellow independent fantasy comic book creator and illustrator Phil Foglio. Zoton and Von Fogg devote much of their efforts toward their inevitable subjugation of humanity, at least in their own minds, but seldom do these make up the principal story, and most actions they take toward that goal are incidental acts of opportunity rather than the results of any long-term planning. Indeed, any time that Zoton's schemes actually appear to come to fruition, his final victory is diminished either by the actions of his fellow classmates, such as time-traveling Tom Davison sabotaging the would-be conqueror's efforts to manipulate history, or how semi-reformed supervillain Crystal Skull repays Zoton for thwarting a complicated fraud going on in his Las Vegas casino with in-store credit at the hotel gift shop instead of cash. These only help illustrate that no matter how smart Zoton undoubtedly is, his fellow students and the adults around him can be just as clever when needed. The appeal of PS238 is its humorous take on the entire superhero genre. From the ridiculousness of superhero activities up to and including all of the ramifications metahumans would have in the real world, including politics and religion, to the trials and tribulations felt by any adult who has to deal with precocious children. While never getting too dark, Williams doesn't shirk from some of the more serious aspects of living in a world with metahuman abilities, including kidnapping, governmental exploitation, the metaphorical landmines of long-buried supervillain equipment, and political conspiracies up to and including overthrowing the US government. As expected of a parody, some PS238 story arcs do follow the usual tropes: alien invasions, thwarting the schemes of supervillains, the aforementioned evil actions of governmental agencies, etc., but usually with a twist that keeps things fresh. For example, instead of the typical space aliens come to Earth and start blowing up our landmarks, the aliens invading PS238 have a goal of assimilating Earth by infecting Tyler with a biological plague that will eventually replace all human beings with their own species, only to be thwarted through a complicated series of events originally set in motion several issues previously. The after effects eventually lead to the death and resurrection of a secondary character, as well as the convoluted creation of a metahuman twin brother for Tyler, Toby Marlock, whose powers are granted through the eldritch forces of order and chaos. Despite this being a superhero comic, Tyler's brother causes him problems more psychological than supernatural, as the boy's heroic parents are not only obscenely excited at finally having a son with actual superpowers, they seem to forget their original real son and his emotional needs, leading Tyler to board at PS238 rather than live at home in the shadow of his artificial brother. Other story arcs include the Rainmaker program, a sinister governmental operation from the 1960s to study and exploit meta-abilities with ramifications that stretch to the modern day. Zoton and other students thwarting Victor Von Fogg's plan to take over an alternate universe. Victor originally planned to destroy it for fuel before learning Zoton had disguised the universe as uninhabited for nefarious reasons of his own. A political conspiracy on Ron's alien father's homeworld of Argos, mistakenly believed destroyed shortly before Atlas's arrival on Earth, and those Argosians' perpetual interstellar war with the same aliens who originally provided the Emerald Gauntlet's power glove. Not all issues involve heavy drama, however. One storyline sees a struggle between two unpopular, politically opposed, Patriot-themed PS238 students competing for class president, while another has several students team up to defeat a hitherto unknown metahuman student from the above-ground Excelsior Public School who is using his newfound ability for teleportation to bully other students. Common superhero tropes are frequently addressed in PS238, in particular how some power combinations have been done to death in comics. The most notable example is how heroes equipped with the basic 4 powers, flight, invulnerability, strength, and speed, commonly abbreviated as FIS, are actually considered almost second-class citizens in the world of PS238 due to how common they are. In fact, most are contemptuously assigned an unofficial number based on the order in which their powers became known to the world. E.g., the minor hero Victorious is also secretly known as 71, as he was the 71st metahuman to show FIS capabilities. They are often treated with little respect on their superhero teams due to how easily they could be replaced. Williams finds a clever way to exploit this prejudice for a good story arc by having Julie Finster embrace her status as the 84th hero to have these powers by literally taking up the metahuman hero mantle of 84. In parallel to many rights struggles in our own world, 84 becomes an inspiration and rallying point for other FIS heroes who begin demanding more respect from the community. Another aspect of PS238 that sets it apart from other superhero-themed comics is Williams draws his characters realistically, particularly when it comes to the females. They aren't the extreme sexualized garbage popularized by hacks like Liefeld and Land, but rather women with real body shapes. If, for example, your meta ability included manipulating the mass in your body to become dense, you're probably going to be purchasing your clothing more from the larger side of the rack at Target. Unfortunately, this drawing style doesn't translate well into creating action-oriented scenes or even very interesting panels stylistically, but that's fine because PS238 is not really a superhero comic in that sense. The point of the comic is situational humor and the absurdity of any given scenario rather than fights between overpowered entities that wreck entire cities. That's not to say Williams doesn't occasionally handle such material, it's that the focus of the series doesn't rely on it. The enjoyment comes from the characters and their interactions, not from the predicaments they face or the ability to punch their way out of them. PS238 was originally published sporadically by Dorkstorm Press beginning in 2002 until issue 21, when it became self-published under Williams' own Do-Gooder Press until the final issue number 50. From April of 2014, Williams turned the black and white series into a full-color, web-only comic. It was originally updated 1 or 2 times per week, but sadly is lucky to see even 3 new pages per month anymore. This is probably due to Williams spending time on other works, including the semi-weekly Full Frontal Nerdity, another exceptional webcomic devoted primarily to tabletop role-playing games, while still regularly hitting on other nerd interests like video games and movies. Most of Williams' work is available to browse for free on his website, Nodwick.com, while his print media is slightly more difficult to get hold of. Fans can still support him on Patreon, which I urge you to do.